There we go. Welcome everyone to the next of our official Comrades Marathon training webinars. It is amazing to be with you once again on this fine Thursday evening, wherever you are in South Africa or around the world. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We've got lots to get through. It's going to be super exciting because the days are getting shorter to the 2024 Comrades Marathon, and we've got a jam-packed program for you this evening. My name is Brad Nadalt. I'm going to get into some formal introductions in just a moment. Before we do that, though, I just want to make sure that everyone can see and hear us. Please do let us know in the comments, in the chat below the video that you're watching. Let me know that you can hear us, and while you're at it, let us know where you are joining us from. What part of the world you are in, and also if you're a novice, if you've never run a Comrades before, if you're an up-run novice, if you've done a down and done an up, let us know that as well. Or if you've done multiple Comrades marathons, please do let us know in the chat as well, and let us know what number you are going for. So it looks like everything is working loud and clear. Taryn saying can hear us. Michael Krusbeck is joining us saying, hello, Barry. Good luck for the 9th of June. I'll get into those formal introductions in just a mo. Looks like everything is working. So brilliant. D saying loud and clear, joining us from Canada, which is amazing. Welcome, D. Good to have you with us. Grant is joining us, going for number 11. Grant Dube, well done, Grant. That's amazing. Dean Moores, a novice in Secunda. Welcome to you as well. So it looks like everything is working exactly the way it should be working. So super brief introduction of our panel this evening. We've got Lindsay Parry with us, who is the official Comrades Marathon coach for the last 15 years. Lindsay has been coaching amateur and professional athletes to PRs and podiums in some of the world's most prestigious races. He's led teams to 3 Olympic Games. He's also been to the Commonwealth Games. He's got a pretty decent marathon PR of a 2:45, also Comrades PB of a 7:11, and has coached back-to-back winners of the Comrades Marathon in Caroline Wassman and Shanae Bosman, and last year got a second with Adele Woodrake. Lindsay, nice to have you with us this evening. Lots to cover tonight, and we'll get into your presentation in a mo. Just so you know who I am, I'm known as the guy who's lost a Backstreet Boy en route to running his very first Comrades. I finished 3 Comrades marathons. I've done 5 Ironmans. The good news is I don't have a Comrades PB of 7:11. Also joining us this evening is Shona Hendricks. She's the former head of sports science at the University of Pretoria. She's a postgraduate degree in sports science and MBA. She's also a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NCSA in the United States. She's also the creator of the Running Through Menopause training framework at Coach Parry. She's an avid runner and triathlete. She's run the New York Marathon, Berlin, Chicago, as well as the Amsterdam. She's in the process of training for her first London Marathon as well, heading over in a very short while. She's done 4 Two Oceans, 7 half Ironmans as well. Shona, good to have you on. And then Sifiso Ngoma is going to be joining us this evening as well. He's the marketing coordinator of the Comrades Marathon. He's been the MC of the Stomp Awards in Cape Town. He's also the assistant race director for the Pietermaritzburg City Marathon, as well as the race director for the Green Trail Run. And then we are super honored to have Comrades Marathon legends on the webinar with us this evening. Barry Holland, he is the person who's run the most Comrades Marathons. He's completed 49 of them. He's got 22 silver, 6 Bull Rowans, 20 bronze, and 1 Vic Clapham to round off that collection. And going for number 50 this year, which is absolutely incredible. Barry, we're so honored to have you with us here this evening. We're going to be chatting in a lot more detail a bit later about some of your experiences, but thank you for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. I think we're going to get straight into things. We want to make sure that you finish listening before we finish, or the other way around. We finish talking before you finish listening. That's going to be our number one goal this evening. And please do know that we love questions throughout these webinars, and that's why we do them, is so that we can get in touch with runners from around the world and around South Africa and really share a whole bunch of knowledge to make sure that you do get your Comrades medal in 2024, whatever it is that you are chasing. So please do, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. We're going to try and answer as many of them as we can this evening. We normally get a really full house on these webinars, so it's virtually impossible to answer all of them, but we're going to try our bestest, okay, to get to as many of those questions as we possibly can this evening. And then I think let's get straight underway with the official Comrades Marathon coach. If you have just clicked on, Lindsay Parry is joining us this evening. Lindsay, I'm going to take this slide deck off and I'm going to pop that one on. And allow you to take it away. So glad to have you this evening. Thanks for joining us, Linz.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, it appears that Sifiso was delayed coming back from Durban. We had a roadshow in Cape Town last night. So for any of you that were there, yeah, sorry for you. You get to hear from me again, and you get to see the same slide. This is what we are training for. It's the Comrades Uprun. Very exciting. My favorite direction, and also the first time that we've run it for many, many years. Had 3 downs in a row, I think, is the number. So yeah, I'm sure running into the home of Comrades, we'll ask Barry about that later. But for his 50th, I wonder which direction he'd prefer to be doing his 50th, but we'll get into that later. So this is what we're training for. Comrades Uprun, that really sets the tone. First 36 Ks is probably 36 Ks of the hardest running you'll do anywhere in any race in the world, certainly on the road. So that is the unique challenge of the Uprun. So much climbing in the first 36, 37 Ks. And then, of course, it's not done because we only hit the high point at Umlaas Road, which is well into the race and probably about 22, 23 kilometers from the finish. So that's the challenge of the Uprun. We will do a webinar right at the end that's almost wholly dedicated to the route. So we'll go through that blow by blow. But really, that is what it's about. These are not all of the hills, but a good chunk of them. Cowie's Fields, both in Changapali Shorts, those are the ones that everybody knows and talks about and whispers in hello tones about. But we've got to get over Tollgate, 45th cutting. We got to run all the way through Westville, which is up the Harrison, not so flat, Umlaas Road, Little Impashini. Yeah, the list is endless. So it is a terrifying prospect, but it's really all about managing yourself and preparing yourself. And that is what we are about to do. Right. So this is really what it's about. This could be you. This is what dreams are made of. South Africans doing well. So yeah, we can't all win, but we can all dream about winning. But this is really what we want. So the webinars, the road shows, the novice shows, everything is really geared towards getting you guys to the start and making sure that you finish. The number one reason for failure, by the end of this series of webinars, you are going to be so tired of hearing this. I am going to say it in almost every podcast that Brad does with me for the Up podcast that we are recording each week. I'm going to really bash this home. The number one reason why people don't finish Comrades, they start injured. So 68% of the runners who do not finish Comrades started injured. Okay, that's not a stat that I made up. That is a stat that we know from sending out survey after survey every year when we look at the finishing. So really, or those that don't finish, we send out a questionnaire to those that don't finish. There are loads of reasons outside of this, but 680 of the 1,000 respondents that we've gotten didn't finish because they started with an injury. So that is really a point that I'm going to keep driving home. It's also why, and this is so, Brad, the slide, okay, it isn't working on my arrow. There, working again. Sorry, apologies. Right, so where are we now? That is a line that was coined by my predecessor, who was Comrades coach for 20 years. And yeah, so we are 107 days to go. We are entering our peak training now. So 18th of March is 12 weeks to race day. Okay, so we've been holding you back. We've been asking you to get consistent, but don't overdo it, and really trying to stop the horse from bolting from the starting blocks. But we are now there. We are entering peak training. It's the 18th of March. We are really going to start building up. And it really is never too late to start doing strength training. hopefully you have started doing strength training, but today Shona's really going to go into depth about why it's so important, and importantly, what you need to do. So that is the main focus of today's webinar. And hopefully a lot of people will have qualified this past weekend. There's been a ton of marathons the last 3 weekends. We've got another big one coming up. In fact, Barry is busy charging all over the country for the Bulwin Marathon series. He's just flown from Cape Town to Joburg, and this weekend has the Phobians. So we've had Jeppy. Next, it was Peninsula, and then it is Phobian. So really just a lot of people qualifying now. And it's a good time to qualify now because it gives you just a little bit of time to recover from that effort. And then, of course, 18th of March, 12 weeks to go. All right. The build-up is real. The time essentially is now. So we are really starting to gear up, and now our focus needs to be on Comrades and Comrades exclusively. We had Vitsa chatting to us last night. Always a privilege having people that have run so many Comrades. And yeah, same advice from him. Comrades season and the real training starts in March and April. So over this 12-week period, this is where we want to really focus on the sleep and nutrition that we covered in the previous webinar. And then we'll go into like really deep detail with the nutrition on the next webinar, where we'll have Nikki. And for the ladies on this webinar, please sign up for the ladies webinar. That is going to be next week, Thursday. Nikki de Villiers will be on there. Shona will be on there. Doc Partuzandu will be on there. A webinar literally just geared towards you, but of course then we'll have some proper ladies focused nutrition there. And really important in this period now is not to skimp on the rest days, and that's really to make sure that you don't get injured. We don't want to be, I mean, getting injured is a part of running, and it's how we deal with it. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So really, where we are right now, you should be up to, if you're aiming to finish Comrades, you should be up to around 45 Ks. Bronze runners are hitting the 50s. Robert Macharlies are moving through the 50s. Bill Rowan's into the 70s, and Silver or Isabel Roche Kelly's are certainly on 110. And over the course of the next 4 weeks, finishes are going to build up into the 50s, Bronze into the 60s, Robert Macharlie through the 60s, Bill Rowan into 80, Silver and Isabel Roche Kelly's are 120 Ks plus. And remember, as I've said a few times now, is that that's kind of your peak week to week mileage. But we are going to have the odd marathon. We are going to have the odd ultra marathon. We are going to have the Comrades long run. So you are going to have some weeks that really poke their head up above these numbers. But this is really the week in, week out type of training that you can expect to be doing and building up to over the next 4 weeks. And if you do have any injuries, you really need to take care of them now. So, I mean, if you could choose when to be injured, it would pretty much be now. Qualify, have a little niggle, rest that out, make sure that that injury is sorted out, make sure that you see the right people, do your strength training so that you can prevent that same injury from happening, and then you kick on for the last 12 weeks going into Comrades. But literally, whenever you get injured or feel pain or there is an issue, you need to get that sorted out. Okay. If you take care of it immediately, if you rest for 2 to 3 days, ice it, that'll take care of 9 out of 10 of the types of injuries that we get training for a race like Comrades. And if it isn't feeling better after 2 or 3 days of rest, probably needs a little bit of physio. If you follow those steps, the chances of you missing more than a week are quite slim. If you ignore it and carry on training, and particularly as we get into April, and you think to yourself, well, if I just get through the next 2 weeks, I'm into May, I'm into the taper. That's the kind of thinking that gives you an injury that you have for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and that really starts to impact your ability to do well at Comrades. Seeding, how important is seeding? So this is another one of those things. I pick some themes sometimes each year through the webinars, etc. And this year's theme is the fact that so many people who don't finish Comrades start injured. And the other theme is this seeding. Okay, I know it's not fun starting in H, but the reality is that even the most talented runners, unless they have a very specific reason for having a really disastrous day on the day that they qualify, you are not going to improve your seeding by more than one seeding pen. So the best you can hope to do is to improve by 2 minutes on race day. So in other words, on race day, you can take 2 minutes less to get over the start line. That's the maximum. That's if you move from H to G. If you move from G to F, it's even less. If you move from F to E, it's even less. If you're moving from C to B, we're talking about like 20 to 30 seconds that you are going to improve in terms of how you get across the line. But every time you race a marathon, every time you try and improve your seeding, you risk injury. You impact your ability to train after the marathon because you need to recover. Your legs are sore, they're tired, you can't train properly. So really don't chase the pen in front of you. Spend your time preparing properly for Comrades. Be consistent. Do the training that you need to do. That will ensure that you are a much better athlete when you line up on the 9th of June. If you train properly from now until the 9th of June, you can be 20, 30, 40 minutes better on the day. But if you race multiple marathons between now and Comrades, chances are you're going to be injured. You're going to be worse off than you are now. You're going to save yourself 2 minutes to get across the start line, but you might not have the fitness, the strength, the endurance to be able to get you to the finish. Okay, so qualify when you're ready. That's always the most important thing, is that qualifying should be done when you're ready. And after this, if you have to qualify in March, so we're still at the end of February, another week to go, but if you start pushing your qualifier beyond the 3rd of March, then you should be trying to qualify with as little effort as possible. Okay, that's really the message around seeding and chasing seeding pens. Okay. Very important to make sure you're on the right plan. So I did go through this one in detail on the last webinar. Previous webinars are on the Comrades website. So if you want to listen to a few things over that I went into depth with, then please do that. But just a reminder here that part of the success is training for the right plan for you. So make sure you choose the right plan, because that's going to reduce your risk of injury, and it's going to make sure you do enough for you and for you to achieve your goals, for you to get to the start line uninjured, and for you to get to the finish line and get a medal. Okay, so again, finishers, anyone who's just qualifying, if you're running a 220 half, so if you haven't qualified yet, but you're around about a 220 half, finishers program for you. Bronze, 209 half, 425 marathon. Robert Machali, 4 hours for the marathon, 155 for the half. Bill Rohn, 335 marathon, 145 half. Isabel Roche Kelly and Silver, 3 hours or 125, 126 half. And then Wally Hayward, we don't actually have plans for that, but if you want to run under 6 hours, you're looking at a 2-hour 30 marathon or a 1 hour 12 half marathon, give or take. And that is it from my chat, Brad. So, yeah, I don't know if Safiso is about yet, but
No. No worries, Lindsay. I will jump into that next, but there have been a couple of amazing questions that have popped through. So I'm going to pop a couple to you now. I'm going to throw the ball into your court, and then we will carry on with the program, if that's good. One about that 68%, Lindsay. This is from Suzanne saying, is the slide 68% DNF start uninjured, or did they start injured? So what's the deal? What's the 68? Explain that again.
So 68% of people who do not finish Comrades start injured. That's the stat. So if you start, I mean, it's not a direct comparison, but if I were to say it slightly differently, the numbers aren't perfect, but you increase your chances of not finishing by almost 2/3 if you start injured.
Cool. Great question, Suzanne. Lindsay, question from Rose Ndlovu. Rose saying, I'm in a snowing environment, so obviously he lives in a place where it's fairly cold, and it makes it difficult to train consistently and following his running schedule. How does he make up for this on the treadmill? Is it possible to train for Comrades on a treadmill?
It is possible. And Rhodes, I mean, the bad news is that there's no formula. I mean, if it says run 3 hours, then run for 3 hours on the treadmill. It's not exactly the same as the road, but it's close enough. I'd stick it on a randomized protocol so that you can not get too bored, or maybe you can do what I used to do during lockdown, which was that I basically made a change to the treadmill every 5 minutes, and I can't remember the exact. Yeah, I can't remember the times, but I'd write a protocol that changed every 5 minutes, and then let's say after 6 repetitions, so after 30 minutes, I'd jump off the treadmill and do 20 push-ups, and then I'd get back on the treadmill and keep going until until I'd run my 2 or 3 hours. But no, that was just how I passed the time. But no, I mean, it's a very, very like for like. So if the plan says hour and a half, run for an hour and a half. It says 3 hours, run 3 hours. What you can do, of course, is you can split it up, so that if you've got a 3 hour run today, you run an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning, and then an hour to an hour and a half in the evening. So that's one way of splitting it up. Yeah, I mean, he's possibly not the best example to use, because later on in his career, he certainly became notorious for the wrong reasons in road running circles. But Alberto Salazar won Comrades training almost exclusively on a treadmill, because he also lived where it snowed quite heavily in winter. So yeah, you can definitely train for Comrades on a treadmill. Some people love it, and people like me don't particularly enjoy running on a treadmill.
Cool. Great question, Lindsay. Another quick question from Sheldon Nike. Sheldon saying, I live in a very hilly part of the country, typically 10 kilometers, more than 200 meters of elevation gain. Does this have any bearing on the required amounts of weekly mileage?
Sheldon, you must come live where we live, mate. It's like we have easily over 300 meters in our 10K runs. Yeah, anything over 30 Ks is like 450, 600 meters of elevation. So South Africa is hilly. So no, I wouldn't adjust the mileage, but you don't have to flog yourself up every hill. So if I was actually running with a very good friend of mine last weekend, and we ran a pretty tough route, and he was squealing, and I was like, but bro, why are you running so fast? Because you are running half a yard in front of me. So I just said, slow down, slow down, slow down. And I showed him on his heart rate monitor that once we got to the right intensity on the hill, yes, it was slow, but you can slow down and run easier up the hills. But on a yeah, in terms of, do you need to then also do the hill repeats? The answer is probably no. So if you live in a really hilly area, and you're running lots of hills, and you're running hills every single day, you don't need the formal hill training. You could probably substitute that for speed work or something similar. But yeah, and just make sure that you aren't always defending your pace on the uphills. I think that's important, because if you're doing that and you're always pushing yourself on the hills, that's when you get you get glute and hamstring tendinopathies. So you do want to back off, and you can walk hills too. Don't be shy to run walk, especially on the days that are designated as recovery days or very, very easy days. You have to run easy, and if you can't run easy enough, do some walking.
Cool. Sheldon, thanks for the great question. Lindsay, one more quick one for you before we carry on with our program. This one's from Ryan Stevenson. Ryan's saying, how would we plan for my wife to drive the course on race day and meet me at several spots along the course and then be at the finish? This is a logistical question. She's not allowed on the course. That's the first thing. It's 100% road closure. But what would be the best, or where would be the best place to get sort of information on how to navigate race day as a spectator?
Yeah, no, I mean, that would be a little embarrassing if she ran along the route with a backpack and waited for Ryan at designated spots and then beat him to the finish. So Brad, I mean, I can't answer that question in detail, but we do a podcast that literally is on how to navigate Comrades Race Day. We've obviously done a great one for the down run, and this year we'll do a great one for the up run. It will change slightly, so I can give you some general advice now, but it'll change slightly depending on exactly what's happening with the roadworks. And like, top tip here is that the harder you train and the faster you run, the easier your wife's job will be, because the more people that are around you, the harder it is for your wife to get in and out of the popular spectator spots. So my advice generally is to look for 2 spots, roughly 30-ish kilometers, which means Hillcrest, but that is super popular. And there are 2 or 3 options in Hillcrest, and then one of Cato Ridge or Camperdown, and that'll depend a little bit on the roadwork situation. But those are quite popular. They're very close to the highway. Generally, parking is fairly good there, especially at Camperdown. Once the roadworks are done there's a really big field. And then you kind of have to play it a little bit by ear after that point, because then it can get very clogged up. I have seen Anne's new plan for the finish, and I do think it's going to make getting into Pietermaritzburg so much easier for the spectators. And there's going to be hobbles more parking at the finish than there has ever been. So, yeah, so hopefully that'll make a big difference, because in past years, and especially if you are targeting a Bill Rowan or faster, which puts you in the top 25% of the field, then sometimes you can have a quick stop where you go under the Lynn Park Bridge or 16-mile bridges. It's a 10-mile bridge, which is 16 k's to go. It's often nice to just pull in there, have a quick stop, and then shoot to the finish. Yeah, and in the good old days, we used to be able to pull off one more stop at little Polly's, but that's actually, yeah, I wouldn't risk that unless you are seconding a silver hopeful. But yeah, we'll go into some good detail. We'll get the lowdown on where the roadworks are at, and we'll do a full spectator podcast, and we'll put that out about 2.5 weeks before race day.
Awesome stuff, Lindsay. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, just a little throwaway that could be an option as well, Ryan, is there's a company called ConSport that does like a concierge spectator service. So if your wife doesn't want to drive and doesn't want to handle that stress, you can get a package for her, and they'll take her a couple of spots along the route and make sure she gets to the finish as well. So that is one way. They also, if you are looking for sort of like help, particularly if you're coming from overseas and you don't have a running club here and support along the route, they'll have a couple of spots along the route that you can leave some nutrition and you can pick it up along the way as well. So ConSport is the name of the company. If you Google them, you will find them. They do a great job every single year. So Lindsay, I'm going to kick you off the stage if that's cool. We'll get you back on in just a second. I just wanted to run through some of the charity initiatives that Comrades are doing in 2024. Unfortunately, Sifiso doesn't look like he is going to make it. So I'm just going to run through this briefly for him to make sure that Comrades does get the punt for their charities that they do deserve. And this is something, funnily enough, that's very close to my heart. I was very involved with the charity fundraising in the early 2010s and did a lot of work around the Race for Charity initiative. We're going to talk you through a little bit about that. Also give you some just housekeeping stuff that you need to bear in mind, some important dates with regards to coming up for Comrades as well. If you have just joined us, welcome to the second of our official Comrades Marathon online webinars. Please, if you are watching this and you have running mates who you think would get value, please just copy the link and send it off to them on WhatsApp, pop it into running groups that you're in. We want to try and help as many Comrades runners as we can get their medal in 2024. And also just something I forgot to mention at the start of this webinar, there was a little bit of miscommunication. Tonight was supposed to be the women's seminar, but we've swapped them out. So this is the general one. The women's seminar is happening, or webinar rather, is happening next week, Thursday, the 29th. We'll give you all the details in a mo, and we'll get shown on to talk a little bit about that a little bit later as well and what you can expect. But just jumping straight into the Amabidi charities, it was established back in 1996 as a Comrades Marathon initiative, and since then they've managed to raise 71 million rand for the Comrades Marathon official charities. They do some amazing work in the community around Durban and Pietermaritzburg and across the country as well. And there are a couple of, or three ways that you can actually donate. You can donate at the expo. You'll also see that there are many little like souvenirs and trinkets that are sold at the expo as well. And then the Comrades Marathon Association has reserved 500 entry spots for runners who raise a minimum of 6,000 rand for one of the official charities of the Comrades Marathon. You still need to qualify to run Comrades, so you have to run a marathon in under 450 or the ultra marathons with their seeding criteria. But if you raise the minimum of 6,000 rand, you get to leapfrog the seeding and you'll start in C batch, which is absolutely amazing. That was the initiative that I helped Comrades set up in 2011, and it's just grown from year to year. And I'll show you some of the ways that you can raise funds in just a mo. And then you can also enter the lucky draw. Toyota, who's the official vehicle sponsor or partner of the Comrades Marathon, they give away a Toyota every single year, and you can buy a raffle ticket for that, and the draw happens on race day as well. The 6 official Amabidi charities, the community chest, they do some amazing work in Pietermaritzburg and Durban. They are unsung heroes in KwaZulu-Natal, and if you can raise funds for them, it is highly, highly appreciated. I've never seen a charity that can make money go as far as the community chest does. They are amazing. Another charity that's very close to my heart is the South African National, or the National Parks Honorary Rangers. They do some amazing work in conservation in our national parks here in South Africa. Childline KwaZulu-Natal do some amazing work with young vulnerable kids in the country. So definitely check them out. The Hillcrest AIDS Center also just really do some phenomenal work on the ground in the communities that you run through on Comrades Race Day. Then we do have massive hunger issues here in South Africa, and Rise Against Hunger do amazing work, not just here in South Africa, but on the continent as a whole. And then the childhood cancer CHOC, you'll see them on race day. There'll be lots of people running in cow print running gear. There will be cow suits that people run in, and they raise millions of rand every single year through various sporting events and do some incredible work for kids with cancer. So definitely, if you do have a soft spot and you would like to support one of the charities, please do. They need every single rand and cent they can get their hands on. It's really easy to do it through Comrades. Even if you don't want to get the seeding, all you need to do is head over to the Easy Reg website, which is where you entered Comrades. Log into your profile. If you've forgotten your password, Comrades will send you one. And then what you can do is click on Comrades Marathon and then click on the Join Race for Charity. You can then be asked, do you want to raise money? Say yes, continue, and then it'll ask you which charity you want to raise funds for. You can actually raise for all 6 if you'd like as well. You can choose the Amabidi charity as the beneficiary, and then whatever you raise will get split evenly amongst all 6 of the official charities. This is the leaderboard at the moment. So far, 230,000 rand has been raised by Comrades runners for the Amabidi charities, and Nato Amaral is the leader at the moment. He is the ambassador for Brazil, the Comrades ambassador for Brazil, an incredible man, and doing some phenomenal work for the South African charities. And then I mentioned the Amabidi lucky draw, where you can win yourself a Toyota. 50 rand is what a ticket costs, and you can get those on the Comrades website at comrades.com. You'll also be able to buy tickets at the expo as well. And then just some really important housekeeping, some dates that you do need to take note of. Entries are currently closed until the substitution period. So you can still pick up an entry during the substitution period. That'll be announced shortly when that's happening. If you, when you entered, decided to do the part payment on your entry, the second and final part of that payment needs to be done by next week, Thursday, the 29th of February. If you miss that deadline, you lose your entry, okay? That is critical to know. So make sure you do pay the outstanding amounts of that entry. Some important dates to remember: the withdrawal period. If you aren't going to be running and you want to put your entry into the substitution pool, that happens between the 15th and 29th of March. And then the substitution window opens, which will be the 1st to the 15th of April. The qualifying period, you have to have your qualifier and your time submitted to Comrades by the 6th of May 2024. If you want to join us on one of the road shows, Lindsay mentioned the roadshow in Cape Town last night. There is still one or two coming up. There's novice seminars as well as ladies seminars coming up. All those details are on the Comrades Marathon website, comrades.com, under the events tab. And then also coming up in person is the Women's Boot Camp. There's one in Durban on the 2nd of March at the Southern Sun Ilangeni. Excuse me. And then in Johannesburg at the Southern Sun in Sandton a week later on the 9th of March. And then also important to remember that the Comrades Marathon Expo is taking place. It starts on the 6th of June. The exhibitor build-up is happening on Wednesday, the 5th of June. But doors open at 10 in the morning, and then it closes on Saturday, an early start on Saturday at 9 and closes at 4. So you need to make sure, if you are traveling to Durban, to pick up your race pack and your number. It has to be done by 4 o'clock on Saturday. You can also, if you've elected to, pick it up at Comrades House in Pietermaritzburg as well. But all the details are on the Comrades Marathon website. Then I mentioned the ladies webinar, which is happening next week, Thursday. You can register for that one. Just so you know, if you have registered for this webinar, you will get reminders for every single one of the general webinars we're doing from here until race day. So you don't need to register for those. But you do need to register for the ladies webinar so that we make sure that you get the link for those. So you can scan that QR code on your phone. It'll take you to a page. Just input your details and we'll send you the link to that webinar. Like I said, next week, Thursday, same time, same place, 29th of February. It is going to be phenomenal. And I'm going to get Shona Hendricks on stage before she jumps into her presentation. Shona, you're going to be hosting that one. Super exciting. You've got Doc Patozondi going to be joining us as well. Just in a nutshell, what can people expect on that webinar?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. We're going to be talking all things related to women in sport, to women's training, specifically to your physiology, looking at things like sports bras, the right sort of training for you, thinking about things that are really specific to only women. And then obviously we'll have Nikki there as well, and she'll be going specifics around nutrition, and Doc Pato will be talking specifics around medical, which will include things on race day that very often guys don't have to think about. So yeah, highly recommend that you register for that. It's going to be really, really cool.
Awesome stuff, Shona. Fantastic. I'm going to hand it over to you to take it away on why strength training is so important. Lindsay alluded it to in a little bit in his presentation, but you obviously are the head of strength and conditioning at coachparry.com. You are super passionate about strength training, and particularly runners doing strength training and the benefits to performance. But you're going to run through all of that this evening, what people should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, and why it is so important. So over to you, Shona Hendricks.
Thanks, Brad. And just before I start, just to mention there, guys, that there was an error on that slide with the women's boot camp in Joburg. I did put it in the chat, but just so you guys know, the Durban one is the 2nd of March, but the Joburg one is the 23rd of March. Okay, so those are also, they're really, really lots of fun and lots of really good information there. And you can come and ask questions in person, which is very, very cool. Okay, but to the all-important strength training. And you know, very much like Lindsay, I feel like a broken record, very often repeating these things, but I think that they are really, really important. And if you start understanding why they're important, I think you'll start to agree with us. But just to start off, I always feel like this. You know, when it says when you go to yoga for the first time after not doing anything but running for months, and literally you are as stiff as a tin man. And so we don't want to have that, and we do want to run, but we want to make sure that running that strength training complements our running. Okay, so we don't want to be like this guy over here, and when he gets back to yoga after just running, which I found quite entertaining. So why strength training? Let's just get into that. And I don't know anyone who doesn't love a special. So a buy one get two free deal. I mean, that just it's like a Black Friday on steroids, right? So buy one get two free deal. And so this is strength training for me. If we buy one thing, you're going to get two things for free just by doing strength training. You're going to get the one thing, and you're going to get all these other aspects that are going to help. So Why strength training? If you do strength work, it's going to help you stay injury free. That's the first thing. And the two things you're probably going to get for free while you're doing strength training is you're going to reduce your fatigue, which in a race like Comrades is obviously really, really key. It's going to get you stronger for those hills, and you're going to become a better runner, right? The best runners in the world are doing strength training, and they're using that to help them become better runners all around. So let's dive into each of these individually and see why they are so important, or how strength training helps that. So with injury prevention, essentially running being a cyclic sport, right? So right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, over and over again. It's just that compounding on your body over and over again. And so we want to use strength training to ensure that we strengthen the bones and the muscles and the joints in the areas that you need to be strengthened in, so that you can sustain the loads of running. And for a race like Comrades, where you're picking up so much, where you're doing so much mileage on the roads, we want to make sure that you are going to stay injury free for the entire time of your training. Okay, so running is a compounding sport. It is going to make you sore, and we want to make sure that that repetitive action isn't going to get you injured. Lindsay has alluded to this, and I want to mention it again, but your success on Comrades race day is going to come from you being consistent in your training from now all the way up to race day, or from slightly before, okay? And how are you consistent is that we want to make sure that you are getting all your runs in. I've heard Lindsay say this over and over again, that if you run 40 kilometers consistently from now until Comrades race day, you will finish, as opposed to running a huge amount and then getting injured and not running for 2 to 3 weeks. So we want to use strength training to make sure that you're turning your blocks green all the time, that every single day you are going to be able to run. All right. And so strength training is going to help you do that. It's going to help you stay consistent so that you can focus on the running and build up your volume and your running volume. And how does it do that? It does that because of the way we run and the biomechanics of how we run. And so it's really important to understand that every time we land on the ground, there's certain things that's happening within your knee and your hip. And because the body's a chain, it works in a certain, what we call like a kinematic sequence. So as you step down, there's going to be a force that's produced on the ground, and that force is going to move perhaps towards the knee, which will land inwards a little bit, and the hips are there to then control that and make sure that we stay nice and strong, and that then when we're pushing forward and the other leg is bringing its leg back and around, that we're able to move in the direction that we want to with running. And if we're weak, what often happens is that those biomechanics get a little bit, they don't work how they should, essentially. And we tend to start compensating in different areas because the body is very clever and it wants to work in certain ways. And it's always going to try and find the most efficient way to do things. But again, because the body's a chain, if something is going wrong somewhere, it might move up the chain or down the chain. And with running being a repetitive sport, if something is moving constantly in the wrong way, it's going to get injured. Okay. And the body's going to eventually give up. And so we want to use strength training to make our joints and our bones and our muscles so strong so that we can sustain the loads from running. All right. So that's the first aspect. The second one, your first freebie that you get from doing strength training, is that you're going to reduce fatigue and you're going to get stronger for these hills. So let's start with the first one. Okay. So when we do strength training, it improves your resistance to fatigue. So what they did a study on elite 10,000 meter runners. Okay. So they run around the track, right? So it's constant running around the track, and they had two groups. They had a group that did strength training, and they had a group that didn't. And the group that did strength training finished a lot quicker than the group that didn't. And the group that didn't do strength training, you could see how they fatigued, and their pacing was nowhere near as good as the initial group. And so it shows that that's resistance to fatigue. So you fatigue less as you're going longer in your race. And obviously with Comrades being an ultra marathon, that is pretty important. And so again, you're getting an aspect for free by doing this, and it's improving your running, which is really, really key. Lindsay pointed to this in his talk, and we want to be able to get strong for these hills. The first 38 Ks of this race is uphill, and you want to be able to do that and do it well and not be absolutely shattered so that you can finish the rest of the race. And so that is just, I don't think I need to really say why that is important. I hope you guys can think about it and realize that is quite key. The more strength training we do, the more muscles are recruited. So the stronger you get means that the muscles, your brain recruits more muscle fibers, which means you are able to get up a hill even faster. All right. The third aspect is that it improves your running performance. All right. If we look at the best runners in the world, yes, their VO2 max is great. There's a high correlation that if you're an elite runner, you've got a very good VO2 max. But what really differentiates the best runners from the world from us mere mortals is that they have an excellent running economy. Okay. Think about what running economy is. Think about it as the fuel economy of your car, right? And in South Africa, fuel isn't cheap. And so I hope this hits home, is that you want to be able to put an amount of fuel in your car and you want it to last as long as possible. And you also want to be able to drive not necessarily as fast as possible. We want to follow the rules of the road, but we want to be able to drive at a decent pace and be able to go for longer. And so the elite runners of the world have a running economy that allows them to use fuel in a very, very efficient way that allows them to go faster and further. And so it's the same thing here for you guys. You might just have an engine that uses fuel quite a bit more, and that's costing you a lot more in terms of your energy and not necessarily your pockets. But strength training improves your running performance between 4 to 6%, which is a massive amount. Okay, so again, it's getting something, you're improving your running without even running. All right, and so I think that is so key. It increases your power. We've spoken around how it increases strength, and this, if I say there in terms of having a stronger core, and I mean that's just a little bit of sciencey talk. There's smaller transfers of forces. Essentially, what that means is when I mentioned how every time you step and your knee moves and then your hip works to make sure that all stays in alignment, is that if that's not efficient, if we don't have that in play, what tends to happen is we tend to run like this, right? As opposed to being able to accelerate and move forward. And so you will become more powerful, you'll become more efficient because your body is working in the right sort of ways and it's not compensating in different ways. And I put the chain there because I mentioned that already, but the body is a chain. So if there's something wrong, going somewhere wrong, if something's a bit weak and there's an imbalance, that is going to move somewhere along the chain. And so we really want to make sure that we are not allowing the body to compensate and that it's working in the right way that it should to make sure that you are running nice and efficiently for the 90 odd kilometers that you are doing. I've mentioned this resistance to fatigue, which is really, really important. And of course, that you'll be climbing for the first 38 kilometers and then some as well. And so just to reiterate how important that really is. We always get this question, and it's a key question as well, because what is strength training? What strength training should I be doing? People often ask, well, I just put up a thing about yoga. Is yoga strength training? Is Pilates strength training? Is cycling strength training? And so I love things like yoga and Pilates. I think they are excellent for runners, and I think that they can complement your strength training and what you're doing. Something like cycling is perhaps more cross training, and yes, cycling is going to help you get up those hills, but I would definitely recommend that you don't sacrifice your strength training to include a cycle. Okay, so we really want to focus that we're getting strength training. And the type of strength training that I'm talking about is resistance training. Okay, so pushing your body against a form of resistance. That doesn't have to be weights. And I'll touch on how we get up towards weights in a bit. But I want you to be able to move your body against a form of resistance. You're going to have to be moving your body up those hills. And so we have to be able to move our body against a form of resistance. Think about doing a push-up. You are pushing your body weight against a resistance. Okay, so that is your resistance. In time, you might move to things like some of these bands are really great. And then, of course, we can incorporate weights, and it really depends where you are at. But that is really key to start getting some of this resistance training so that we're building muscles and not just sort of maintaining. And so we want these to be running specific. We want our training to be very running specific. We want it to complement our running, and we want to focus on specific areas. So things like the core. And the core, guys, is not just your really good looking abs that make you look good at the beach. It is if you think about this as your spine, it's all of the muscles that surround the spine, and it's got to do with how it stabilizes your pelvis. So we want to focus on things like that. Especially for a race like Comrades Marathon, we of course want to focus on quads, glutes, and hamstrings, because those are going to be the sort of prime movers that force us and drive us up the hills. So those are key. Then definitely some lower body stabilizers. So I like to do a lot of work on soleus to make sure that we're stabilizing, and gastroc. So those are your calf muscles. And then one of the things that people always, I don't even think forget, but they don't even think about, is working on strength of the foot. I call it foot core. So it's very much like the core of your body. And we want to make sure that we're working on the small intrinsic muscles in the foot because that has a lot to do with stabilizing. So it's going to help with injury prevention, but it's also really going to just help stabilize, again, that whole chain of the body. Another thing that people forget to work on, and while that is the focus, is lower body, is people forget to work on their upper body. And because that does affect posture and the way we land up running, especially when you're going to be out there for 11, 10 hours, you are going to get tired. And so we want to work a little bit on postural aspects so that we're not falling down here. And again, running side to side, we want to be efficient. And also, you are literally holding your arm at a 90-degree angle. And so it's going to feel like your arm isn't going to be able to bend after Comrades. And so some good isometric work and some good upper body work is going to be helpful for you on race day. All right, this is what I was going to say, is that progression is important. And so I do think that we need to be doing some resistance training. But if you've never done any kind of strength work in your life, don't just go to the gym and start deadlifting 70 kgs or squatting, whatever. You are going to hurt yourself. So make sure that we start where we need to. So if you've never done any strength work, start with some body weight stuff, okay? And just focus on basic exercises like some squats and some lunges. We want to do some core, we want to do some step ups. We definitely want to make sure that we're doing some calf raises and some bent knee calf raises. So we want to be, that's all body weight stuff. And then from there, when that starts getting easier, you can start adding in some of these bands, which are great. And there's so much you can do with these. And they also come in different weights as well. And then obviously from there, we can progress up, to using weights and so on. We are quite close to Comrades in terms of that, we don't want to be doing very, very heavy strength work. As Lindsay mentioned, we are getting closer to our peak training months. So April and May being peak Comrades training volume months, but we do need to have a base of strength work. And so now is the time that you should definitely be doing some strength training. And as we get closer to race day, we can minimize, or not minimize, just bring that down a little bit so that it's not affecting your running. And let me just say that I think that's one of the questions I often get, or one of the complaints I get about strength work is that, but Coach Shona, it makes my legs always so tired. And initially it is going to. You are going to get a little bit stiff, but once you recover and you get a little bit stronger, that will get better. But the key thing about strength work is that it shouldn't be making your legs absolutely exhausted for your running. You should be able to still maintain all your sessions. And so if you are feeling like your legs are too sore to run, then you're probably doing a bit too much and perhaps not the right sort of work. It should always just complement your running. Okay. How often should you be doing strength training? Ideally for Comrades, I would say twice a week. We have a saying here at Coach Perry, ideally twice a week, but 2 is better than 1, and 1 is definitely better than none. Okay, so if I don't want to talk about where we in like an off season, so post Comrades, but where we are now, you can be doing 2 sessions a week. If you've never done strength training, I'd rather I'd rather you only do 1 session a week and you do it consistently from now until Comrades, right? That would be far more useful than doing 2, missing 3 weeks, doing 2, missing 3 weeks. Okay, so start with 1. And I know that life happens, and we're realists here at Comrades and Coach Perry. We know that these things aren't always feasible. And so 2 is better than 1, and 1 is definitely better than none. These sessions don't need to be extremely long. 30 to 45 minutes would be ideal, and that is what you need. Again, it's there to complement your running. Okay. And when to stop strength training, I think this is quite key as well. You want to reduce the load of your strength training in your recovery week. So you should have a recovery week. I know in Lindsay's plans, they might differ, but probably in and around every 4 weeks, you would have a recovery week from a running perspective. In those weeks, you want to reduce your strength training. What I like to say to people is, if you're doing 2 sessions a week, then maybe drop it to 1. I know people just like to have the frequency because they're in the routine, right? So if you want to still keep it at 2, then just do less. So don't do 3 sets of your exercises, only do 2. So you can minimize it that way if you want to keep the routine. But it's important that you do have that rest, because remember, we only get the benefit when we are recovering. And you want to reduce your load in big training weeks. So that's, when we're doing training marathons or training ultras, and obviously your Comrades run, we want to just reduce that load a little bit in those weeks as well. And after those runs as well. You don't necessarily want to do your long run and jump into a strength session on the Monday thereafter. You do want to be running those easy enough that you should feel like you could want to. But we want to just allow for some recovery there. And then ideally, I recommend that you should stop doing strength training 10 days before Comrades. So 2 weeks out, if you were doing 2 strength sessions, you can do 1. If you were only doing 1 strength session, you can still keep that 1. And then obviously in race week, no strength at all, just so that we're getting that taper properly and really getting all the benefit of the strength work that we've done. Last consideration, guys, this is really, really important. So all of this, okay, you can go and get strength plans and you can find out what to do, but it's how we do these exercises that's really, really key. It's the technique of what you do. And especially if you are a little bit more experienced and you're lifting a little bit heavier, if you're not doing it with the right technique, you stand a risk of injury. There's a risk of injury with that. But more importantly, why do the exercise if you're not going to get the actual benefit from that exercise? And so the technique of these things is key. And again, just those progressions for where you are currently. So start where you are and just build up from there to where you want to get to. All right. Yeah, that is me. Let me just say that we have put together a free Comrades Marathon strength training plan. So yeah, this is a goodie for you guys. If you've never done strength, just scan that QR code and download that free Comrades Marathon strength training plan. It is a starting one. So if you've never done it, I think it's a great place to start. It gives you everything you need for the up run in terms of some step ups, some glutes, some hamstrings, some core, some stabilizers. Yeah, and definitely it's a great place to start. And that is me. Thanks, Steve.
Brilliant, Shona. That is fantastic. Some great questions coming through. I'm just going to throw a couple to you before we get Barry on, if that's good, just around the strength training. Some great ones coming through. Let me find the one that somebody was asking about the strength training and can we do strength training on rest days?
Awesome question. So I really just remember that when we're resting or recovering is when we're getting the benefit. Okay, so we want to make sure that we at least have 1 full day of rest. So yes, you can do strength training on your non-running days. Let's call it that, on your non-running days, as long as we're still having a rest day. So if you are following a Coach Perry plans, it's very likely that you're only running 4 times a week anyways. And so you could then be, if you're running Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, you could then be doing strength Monday, Wednesday, and still have your rest day on a Friday as well.
Fabulous. Great question, Motsumai. Thank you so much for that. Shona, one from Peter John August. Peter John saying, I have a pinched nerve in my neck, currently can't run. Will exercises help so that I'm ready for Comrades?
Yeah, pinched nerves and necks is very, very much outside of my scope. So I'm cautious to really be giving any kind of advice on that. So I mean, sorry, I think his name was John. I would definitely recommend going to see someone about that and making sure that they sort that out. So yes, definitely no running, but there's a very, very big drive at the moment where people are saying, like physio and those sorts of aspects where that's going to movement as medicine. And we do a lot of mobility work in our strength training plans, and just that general movement really, really helps a lot. Like we did a mobility challenge recently, and we had people who were saying they had back pain and their back pain was going away. I do as well. I currently have a little bit of lower back pain, and just sticking to some mobility exercises makes a world of difference. So I'm not sure if that is specific to you, so please rather go get that checked out. But yes, in general, when we're having some aches and pains, some mobility work is really, really, really good to help with that. Because as runners and as Comrades runners, we definitely are doing higher loads, and so we will have some niggles and pains as we're going. So focus on some of that mobility as well.
Yeah, perfect. And then just the last one for now for you, Shona. This one from Samuel. Samuel saying, I picked up a knee injury in November 2023, have qualified for Comrades already. Can strength training help me heal quicker before Comrades this year?
Yeah, again, I think touching onto that movement as medicine aspect, and knee injury is there's so many things that a knee injury can be, right? There's so many different aspects, but yes, if we could find out what that actual injury was, perhaps where there's a weakness, that definitely we can use strength to help rehab that and get you stronger for race day for sure. So we would need to know what the injury is and how to rehab it, but yes, it definitely can help with that. And of course, again, we really want the strength training to be there so that we don't land up getting these injuries. And I think, Brad, is one of those things I always find, and Lindsay and I have actually had this conversation before, is that strength training is like one of those things that if you have it and then you take it away, you realize how important it was, or is. And so, it's one of those things that you like, oh, I won't get injured, I don't need it. And then you get injured and then you do strength and you realize how important it was. So, so I really, really hope that has come across as well.
Awesome stuff. Shona, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. There are lots of other strength questions. We're going to just carry on with our program for now, and then we'll get to those questions. So do stick around if you have asked one, particularly about strength. Also, there were a few training ones earlier for Lindsay, which we'll get to a little bit later on as well. But I'm super, super excited to be able to welcome our next guest onto the stage. He is an absolute legend when it comes to Comrades running. He is the gentleman who's run the most. He's run 49 Comrades, going for number 50 in 2024. He's got 22 silver, 6 Bull Rowans. He's got 20 bronze and 1 Vic Clapham as well. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome onto this evening's webinar, Barry Holland. Barry, thank you so much for your time and for waiting so patiently. It's great to have you with us, and just absolutely honored to have you on this evening.
It's my absolute pleasure. It's great to be with you guys, and been listening very intensely to Lindsay and the team, and in fact, got no real co-ops with anything they're saying. They're mostly going to endorse very much what they're saying. It's all complete sense, and the runners on this webinar tonight, they must listen. They really must listen, because this is great advice. Really great advice.
Excellent, Barry. Lindsay and Shona, I'm sure will be delighted to hear that. But I mean, no one's got as much Comrades experience as you have. And I was thinking about it while Shona was chatting, and I was like, oh, green number's pretty good. Double green number's good if you've done 20. If you've done 30, it's a triple. Quadruple is incredible. But what do you call a 50 Comrades? Is there a name for that green number?
I have no idea. And this has actually gone through my head. It must be a penta or something. It must be a penta number or something. Penta
they're going to have to make the number bigger, Barry, to get all those reeds on it.
Trees on there, yeah, absolutely. They got a lot of reeds to fit on there now.
Barry, I have to ask. I'm going to get Lindsay on as well. I know Lindsay's got a few questions that he would like to ask too. But let me ask the first one, if I can. How have you stayed motivated for this long? And the reason I ask this question is, I think a lot of Comrades runners, they're very excited when they first get started. They're a novice, they're nervous. The first one, I don't want to say it's easy to train for, but it's easy to stay motivated to train because you're so scared. Like you're not quite sure what you're in for. And then you do your first up or your first down, depending on what you did for the first one, and it's exactly the same. You're petrified because you don't know what to expect. And then number 3 and 4, you're still motivated because you're petrified again because you know what to expect. But then you get to this like little patch in the middle where you're heading for your green number, where, as South Africans say, you get gutful. You get tired of the early morning starts, especially as it gets closer to race day, and it becomes harder and harder to get out there and do the kilometers and the miles you need to do. How have you stayed so consistent for so long? What's the secret to your success?
I think at the core of this thing is the fact that am I just running, or is this a part of my life? Is it a complete life experience for me? And it has been. It became that. It didn't start out that way. It started out exactly what you said. Now go and run 1, run 2, run up, run down. Yeah, all of those things. But as I got more and more involved in long distance running and running Comrades, it really became quite a challenge in my head that I had to achieve certain things. And I think that's what becomes the core of there's always something that you want to do. I was a very slow learner. I mean, I was obviously quite dwarf at school, so because it took me 19 years to run my PB, and that's not normal. I mean, you should be running your PB after maybe 3, 4, 5 years when you've got a bit of experience and your legs have hardened up and your body is now acclimatized to this crazy sport, but not 19 years. But in those 19 years, I had decided what my possible bests were, with a lot of research and obviously, tapping into people like Lindsay and others that came before him, and saying, okay, fine, if I can do this time over 8Ks, what can I potentially do? Because as we know, and I think Lindsay will agree here, that your 8K time trial is your most incredible benchmark. It'll inform all of your running. So if I can do X at 8Ks, I should be able to get to Y at a 21, at a 42, etc., etc., etc. So having established those, I went searching for those times. And yeah, some of them took a long time to get, and I think that's what keeps you going. And then so you're chasing times, and then you do chase medals. After a while, you suddenly run a double green, and then you think, well, I'm still loving my running, so maybe we'll head for 30. And when I'd done 30, I was still loving my running. So then 40 sort of became something on the horizon. And I'll be honest with you, once I did get to 40, a lot of the thoughts were, would this impossible dream be achievable? Would somebody get to 50? And now we're going to get there. So Brad, I think it's kind of all of those things. There's so many little things that you can do at Comrades. You've got a down PB. But now you say, well, what can I do on the up? Because as we will all agree, they're two totally different races. You can't even speak about them in the same breath. They are two completely and utterly different races. So whatever you might have done on the down, you might do better on the up, or you might not do better on the up. So yeah, it's a bit shorter, but hell, it's so severe. As Lindsay said earlier, that first half is an absolute monster. So yeah, it's all these little things, these little private challenges. You're not racing anybody else. Unless you're the top 10, the gold medalists, you're not racing anybody else. In your club, you might be racing for first man home, and I had the honor of doing that on a number of occasions and being first man home in my club, whether it be at Jeppy or wherever. But you're not, so you're only racing against yourself primarily. Really, it's you against the clock, you against your ambitions, what you want to try and achieve at Comrades. And I always found that quite a fascinating sort of thought process as to what I could get to.
Lindsay, you got
and that was a 6:20, Brad. I don't know if you know that was it. Did you get under 6:20? I mean, you obviously are famous for your role that you made, but it was I thought it was
6:29, Lindsay. Yeah, 6:29. Yeah.
Well, so sub 6:30. And look, these things don't come across on camera that well. But if you've ever met Barry in person, he could have been mistaken for a rugby player. He's tall. You're tall. You're a strong guy. 6.5 hours for Comrades. That is a hell of a run. And what I'm interested to hear is, like, so you literally were there as Comrades exploded. When you started at Comrades, there were a couple of thousand crazy people. Now you've run all the way through that to where the race is now getting 23,000 entries. Like, what was it like essentially being through that whole patch when it was just a couple of crazies that were hanging out and doing their thing and training for Comrades to capturing the imagination of everybody?
I'd say it was pretty amazing, because my first Comrades, there were just on 1,000 runners. So it nothing like the fields we had today. And of course, in those early years, I mean, there were so many things that came in. More or less at the time I started running. I started my first Comrades in 1973, and you'll know that through guys like Jim Fix in the States and stuff, the running explosion was actually just kind of starting. Marathon running was starting to just take off in the States, and people were investing in this crazy sport of long distance running. But if I think about the fact that when I started running Comrades, we had to have our own personal seconds. There were no water points. You didn't, roll down the road and somebody was giving you Coke and water, and so we had to have our own personal seconds out there with a motorbike, and it was absolute chaos out there at times. In fact, I remember they had just said that the bikes were becoming a major problem because everybody had the pharmacy scooter with the box on the back, because that was the ideal seconding vehicle, and everybody was now doing this, and it was a down run. And as we came sort of kind of over, I suppose, the top of Little Polly's, sitting up, because they made the motorbikes go to the 16K turnoff, as you said earlier, the 10 mile at Lion Park, and they couldn't come any closer to the start. And there was a blue haze, an absolute blue haze sitting over the horizon there, because it was all the motorbikes sitting, pumping their gases into and their blue smoke into the air. So quite a lot of fun. But I remember so distinctly running more than likely my second, third, fourth Comrades, whatever, and with so few people. My dad was seconding me in the old family Volkswagen, and he knew nothing about running. And I just told him more or less where he had to be, and he went out there. It was somewhere around about it must have been around about Botha's Hill, and I remember I told him a spot, and he didn't quite get to that spot. So he wasn't, what runners are like. Now you're devastated. The old man hasn't got you. He's got your drinks. Has he got lost? Whatever. Anyway, so I couldn't find him on the road. But then it struck me, there was nobody else on the road. I could not see one single runner ahead of me. I mean, I could have been running a training run, not one runner on the road. Because, when you've got 1,000 guys and they spread out over 90 Ks, it's nothing like the race is today. So, yeah, those early memories, wonderful, wonderful times. I mean, there's wonderful memories that we make now. You make all your memories in different stages of your life, or something like Comrades. But great memories from those early times, because we were a bunch of crazies. People, the whole explosion of running hadn't taken off yet, and we were out there fighting times, fighting seconds, trying to find your drinks. It was a lot of fun, lots of fun.
Barry, I have to laugh when you talk about not seeing anyone on the road. I always, when I chat to novices, a couple of years ago, Comrades had me traveling around the country with Lindsay, talking to the novices. And I used to say to them that if you're a novice at Comrades and on race day there's no one around you, you're in trouble, because either you're right at the front of the field,
you're winning.
As a novice you don't want to be, or you're right at the back. So you need to make sure there's people around you all the time. So there's some good advice. I'm going to share a question that was actually asked within the community tonight. Very great question from Michael Krusbeck, who's joining us from up north in Europe. I think he's in Europe or he's in the States. I know he's originally from the Netherlands, but he might be living in the States. And he's saying, Barry, since you didn't have to qualify back in those days, did you ever run a marathon or other long distance run before running your first Comrades, or was it just a wing and a prayer for your first one?
Look, we didn't have the help that we've got today. We didn't have the Lindsay Parrys. We didn't have, Bruce putting a lot of time and effort back into running. Someone like myself, who now puts a lot of time and effort back into running and mentors novices and runners, etc. So we didn't have that. You pitched up on. I ran with a group called the Regent Harriers in Durban North. A wonderful guy called Ron Clokey. But there was no training program. You just pitched up and you ran. Ron said we're running 10 Ks today. You ran 10. If he said you're running 15, you ran 15. There was no real structure. Those guys survived very much on just natural experience. So I went along to run my first marathon. My first marathon was in my first year. Yes, we did a lot of long distance runs. But I ran my first marathon. It was, you guys might remember it or know it. It was the old Savages Marathon, and it went out towards Nagel Dam. And I just pitched up, and the guy said, I said, well, how far is this thing? They said, no, it's 42 Ks. I said, well, I didn't, in my mind, be able to compute what that really was. It sounded like a hell of a long way. And I ran 3:11. So, my first marathon was 3:11. So obviously I realized then, and I think the guys around me realized, that I must have some talent. But even that, having said that, there was no mentoring after that. The guys didn't say, "Oh, Barry Holland, you look like you can run a bit. You must do this or that or that." It was all just kind of, make your own way, and there was no training programs. You just ran, and so in a way, I think you guys will agree that it's quite an honor to be a novice silver. Very, very few guys get silver in their first year out at Comrades, and I think I could have. My first Comrades was 7:52, so I was close enough. 7:52 is a hell of a long way from a silver, but it's close enough that if somebody had said, "Look, this is what you do. This is what you must go through halfway in." If I'd had some of that mentoring, I think it could have been a different story. Yeah, because we didn't have that. The guys today are so lucky. Today, every club has, most clubs have got a great club captain, experienced club captain. They write the training programs for the clubs, and they're there to, give advice, etc. We had very little of that, if anything.
Barry, let me ask you this. Lindsay mentioned earlier, and I've seen you in real life as well, so I know this to be true. You're definitely not built like a Kenyan marathon runner. That's for sure. You as Lindsay said, I don't know if I'd call you a rugby player. There's some big rugby players in this country, but you definitely you don't have the build of someone who's super fast. I mean, that's so your body's taken an enormous amount of pounding over the years. What are 2 or 3 things that you think has been your secret to longevity, to be able to keep on running? It's one thing running a handful of Comrades, but to be as consistent as you have. You've obviously had injuries through the years, but what have you done that's been able to keep your body in good enough nick that you've been able to run this long for as long?
I'm just a touch under 6'3" in the old terms. I would know. No idea what that is in metric.
Barry, in today's terms, you'd be playing scrum half at 6'3". So
you're right. But and when I was racing Comrades, I call it 2 different runners. I'm a real back of the field plodder now, but when I was racing Comrades, I weighed 87 kilograms. And often, my great mate Bruce Fordyce would often, obviously over not a glass of red wine, but a bottle of red wine, we would stand and at a function, and he would say, "You see my mate Barry Holland here?" And the guy says, "Yeah. Well, he's won Comrades," and they would look at him and say, "Well, Bruce, have another glass of wine. I mean, come on, guy, what are we talking about here?" And he said, "No, listen to me, because as we all know, Bruce is a very erudite and very, very intelligent man." And he'd say, "Listen, 629 at 87 kilograms and my 529 at 51, 52, 53 kilograms. I'll tell you that if you look at the science of that at weight versus time, that he's won Comrades." Well, I never believed that, but it was a nice theory. But what you are saying is true. I was not given. I was racing against guys that I would have loved to have had their bodies. I was racing against guys that were mostly weighing 60 kilograms, late high 50s, early 60s, what a power to weight advantage. I mean, power to weight there is just everything, But in real answer to the question there, Brad, a couple of very specific things that I've done. And I'm now keying into what Lindsay was talking about earlier. But Lindsay was talking about the 68% that have started injured. And I would want to say that every runner that's doing that must ask themselves, why are they injured? Why are you injured? And the answer to that question is almost always overuse. Almost every single reason for an injury is that you're using the body too much. You're using those legs too much. You're doing something stupid. And that's the next thing. I believe that I've always counted myself as a clever runner, a thinking runner. So what I'm saying is that if you haven't been on the road for long, or even if an experienced runner has only just started training, are you going to go and do a track session? The answer is no. You're not going to go and do a track session. The track session is the most vicious, hardest training there is. It's putting the greatest amount of load in the least amount of time through your body. And the answer is no. Don't go and do that. Are you a 40K, 45Ks a week back of the field runner, and your mate says we should go and do some track work? I say no. I don't believe you should be doing track work. Track work, I don't think is going to get you anywhere faster on Comrades Day or allow you to finish Comrades. So it's a case of being a clever runner and knowing what you should be doing. So keying into people around you, asking the experts, and the other part of the answer to that question is that I've always managed to listen to my body. So when my body is telling me that it's sore, then I must have to take a rest day. I might have to take 2 days off. Now, runners hate taking days off. They, the worst thing you can tell a runner is not to run. But if you have to be honest with yourself, and if you are hurting, then don't run. It's as simple as that. So you need to listen to your body. Absolutely key. It's so critical that you it's even if you've got the sniffles, if you're starting to get sick, your heart rate is elevated, don't run, because all you do is get sick, and then you're going to lose a week in training, much like Lindsay was saying earlier. So you've got to answer that question: why am I injured? Mostly through overuse, doing too much. And then the other thing, the last part of the answer to that question is that after Comrades, I have never been back on the road in anything less than 6 weeks. Nothing ever in 49 years, less than 6 weeks, ever. And that is, I see my mates at my club, after the testosterone's there, they love their running, they're missing their mates, and 7, 8, 9 days later, they're running again. And I mean, I'm not a medical man, but I know that when you finish Comrades, you have got literally millions of microscopic muscle tears in your legs. And the only way those things can heal is by rest, by no impact sport whatsoever. You can go swim if you like, you can exercise, you could ride a bike, but you may not run. And I've nothing less than 6 weeks. And I'll be honest with you, over the years, more like 2 months off the road, completely and utterly.
I see Lindsay's nodding profusely, Barry. You're preaching to the
No,
choir.
that's if I mean, I know we're in the business of preparing people for Comrades, but honestly, if people can take that home with them for after Comrades, that's one of the best pieces of advice I've heard in a long time. So yeah, second that.
You see what that does, of course, is that that sets you up for the next Comrades, because
Exactly.
if you're going to be a multiple Comrades runner like most of us are, if we look at those stats, that how many people in the history of the race have ever run Comrades, it's a surprisingly low number, which talks to the fact that it's a repeat business. And if you want to be
Brad and I always make this joke, Barry. We always say it's because Comrades runners can't do maths, because they have to do an up and a down, and two is halfway to 10. So you got to keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's guys must stay off the road after Comrades, because then they'll be lining up to get to that second Comrades, or that 10th, or that 21st Comrades a lot quicker.
Awesome. Lindsay, if it's okay with you, Barry, I'm going to sprinkle in questions for both of you, if that's okay, and for Shona. Shona's still in the background as well. There are a couple of strength questions. We'll get her back on. And I've got a couple more questions for you as well. If you've got questions for Barry, Lindsay, or Shona, please feel free to pop them into the chat as well. Lindsay, this one's for you, and I'll get Barry to throw his 5 cents worth in there as well. But Barry, you were talking about the 8K time trial as a benchmark to what you can achieve for longer runs. Lindsay, Helen wants to know what time translates to a sub 450 marathon with regards to an 8K. So what would you need to run an 8K and to run a sub 450? And then B, what would you need to run to be able to finish Comrades?
I think the two answers, the answers are the same. I mean, for 450 and to finish Comrades, they're the same answer, because to finish Comrades, the number is actually around about 4. I think it's 448. I think is the exact number, but Rowan James doesn't like working. He always used to say, no, give me round numbers. So that's how we settled. And look, it's important to also note that it's not an absolute exact science. But you're looking at about 50 minutes. So So plus minus 50 minutes or close to 50 minutes for 8Ks translates to your 450, which then translates to being able to do a 12-hour Comrades.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if just chip in there, you know, I wouldn't know the slower times as well as I used to know the faster times, because nowadays it's more survival. But when I was racing Comrades and running silvers, you know, a benchmark was sub 30. If you couldn't do sub 30 minutes for an 8K time trial, you were unlikely to run a silver, because the sub 30 8K time trial translated exactly to what Lindsay put up in his chart earlier of sub 3 for a marathon. If you can't run sub 3 for a marathon, you're highly unlikely, not impossible. Got a number of mates that never ran under 3 hours, but yet ran silver at Comrades, but it's unlikely. They're outside of the norm. And then I used to, as I said, that using of that, once you start to know your body and you start to monitor your own times and what you've done, then I used to be able to take that. So if I was running just under 30 minutes for time trial, then I was a silver. I was a 725 or just a silver. If I wanted to run what I call the good silver, get down to 710, 715, then I had to be down at 29:30, you know, around about the 29:30 mark. And the moment when I was trying to get under 7 hours, and it took me a long time to get under 7 hours, but when I was trying to get under 7 hours, I knew that I had to get down right on 29 minutes. I had to be there, at, you know, on 29 minutes. And when I decided in the year that I had my go at my PB and I ran my 6:29, I had set my benchmark at 28:30. Had to be under 28:30 for 8. Otherwise, I was unlikely to run the 6.5, and I was able to get under those times. But but I think you can put these things in a chart, but they're very much you as well. Look, there are generalizations here, but it's also very much you, and how you get through those barriers will inform what you can do in the longer distances.
Cool, great stuff, and a great question as well. Lindsay, here's a question for you. Wandile is asking about the route tester. Is it necessary to run a Comrades route tester that is on the 4th of May after running 2 Oceans on the 13th of April?
So, look, that's a very cool question, because Oceans now has a fixed home. It's going to be that 13th, 14th. And so this is actually going to be a common question every year. So if people have the means to do a route tester and they haven't done Comrades before, I do think it's a good idea. I don't, you know, some people think it's a good idea to not know what's coming, especially on the up run, but I'm not one of those. I think if you know what you're planning for, so that when people tell you to run slowly in those first 40Ks, you are eyes wide open. So I do like the route tester, and it does complicate it with Ocean. So for the majority of the field, my advice is that if you're doing Oceans, that do the route tester, but don't do too much of it. So I wouldn't do more than 40Ks of the route tester. So if you've done 56Ks on the 14th of April, 3 weeks later, you do 40Ks of the route tester. It'll give you a good idea of what you can expect on race day. It kind of gives you a top up. And again, in line with you know, Barry's theory, in that, like, for most people, 56Ks is a huge undertaking all on its own. So there is going to be damage. So now if you go and do another 50 to 55, you're putting yourself in with a real possibility of getting injured. Okay. And only 5% of the field gets silver. So I'm not talking to that 5%. You know, they will recover faster, and they'll probably be just fine to go and do another 45 to maximum 50 3 weeks after Oceans. But that would be my advice. Do it if you've got the means, particularly if you live in Durban. You'd be crazy not to go and do the route tester, really get a feel for what's coming on race day, but just pull it back. Don't do the whole thing.
Awesome, great question there. Question for Shona. Shona, this one is from Riaz. Riaz is asking, does CrossFit workouts of the day count as a strength session?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question because sometimes can be misconstrued in the wrong way. So yes, CrossFit is resistance training. You are doing exactly like I said you should. And I don't have an issue with CrossFit gyms at all, and the type of training they do. I do get concerned sometimes with the wanting to move for more weight and more reps and more as opposed to just doing strength work that's complementing your running. So I like CrossFit. I do CrossFit myself. And so I think it just depends. You've got to have a really good coach that focuses on your technique so that you're not pushing way too hard, to make sure that you're getting those sort of CrossFit PBs. And so maybe in the time that you're training for Comrades, I when I'm training heavily for my running, I do CrossFit, but then I only do the squats and deadlift days. I don't necessarily do the snatch and all the Olympic lifting days and gymnastics as well. So I think you just need to be specific because it comes down to the intensity as well that you're doing your CrossFit stuff at, and how that is going to affect all the rest of your sessions as well. So love CrossFit, but it's just about how we manage that in your plan.
Awesome stuff.
I'm Brad, we're a whole bunch of old school guys here. Well, I'm the old school guy here, and in those days I hated the gym. We never went to gym. The only time I ever went to gym was when I did my 629, and I was doing a presentation one day at Germiston Kelly's with Alan Robb, my great mate Alan Robb, and somebody said to Alan, so what do you think is the best exercise for running? He said, the best exercise for running is running. And that was such a great answer because in those days, that's what we did. We ran. We didn't do any of what we in those days would have called nonsense. And it's not nonsense. I'm doing strength training now, Shauna. So you can be proud of me. Yeah.
Very, very, if I can just say, I hate the gym. So I love the lifting. I love like the CrossFit stuff, but I hate the gym. And I just think that's such a key point. And Brad, I don't even know if there's a question with that, but it always comes up like, do I have to go to a gym to do this? No, you don't. So that free strength training plan that we've put together is a home-based one, so you really can do it while you've got Netflix on or while you're, helping your kids with homework or something. And of course, there's progressions on that, but yeah, I agree with you completely. And sorry, Barry, I just want to throw something in there. And this is just quite cool. I know it's a different Germiston Kelly's, but my dad played professional football for Germiston Kelly. So I just wanted to mention that there as well, because it's always just a proud moment. I mean, little name drop. So yeah.
Well, if you're somewhat of a Comrades historian, you'll actually know, guys, that Germiston Kelly's is in fact the greatest Comrades club of all time. Most wins and across, I mean, whether it be Wally or, Alan in those days, and unbelievable club in terms of the winners that they produced.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Thanks for that answer, Sean. Brilliant. Lindsay, I love this question because sleep is a superpower. And this one is from Hero, saying, if you are generally struggling to sleep, how do you go about improving sleeping? And are sleeping pills the solution? So before you answer those questions, I actually want you to just touch on the importance of sleeping. Why is sleep so important, particularly for Comrades runners?
Yeah, so I mean, the real answer to that is that during sleep is when our body like supercharges recovery. It is when the body produces testosterone and growth hormone. And the earlier you can go to sleep before 10 o'clock, the higher that peak production of growth hormone and testosterone is. Okay. And if you're going to sleep consistently past midnight, you're almost getting no testosterone and growth hormone, and therefore recovery is really compromised. So yeah, it's not always super practical for people to get into bed much before 10, but certainly in these 12 weeks. And I think that's always what I try and stress, is that as we get 18th of March to race day, in those 12 weeks, if you can just make a concerted effort to try and get into bed a little bit earlier, how can you improve the quality of your sleep and make it easier to fall asleep and to fall into a deeper sleep? Get off devices for like half an hour before you go to sleep. Okay, so no phones, tablets, TVs, laptops. Just get off that stuff. Read an old school book. Talk to somebody, but get off of devices. And then really cool and dark rooms make a big difference. In terms of sleeping pills. Of course, they can help, and they improve all the time. So, your previous generation of sleeping pills, yes, they would help the sleep and maybe the quality of sleep, but you would wake up feeling like you've been drugged. So I wouldn't take any sleeping pill without consulting a doctor. So I think that's the most important thing. And yeah, of course, people with chronic sleep issues need some assistance. I would get that. Yeah, all I would say is that don't self-medicate yourself with stuff like that. The over-the-counter stuff, some of it's addictive. There's all sorts of reasons not to, but there's also plenty of reasons to do it under medical supervision.
I'm guessing the night before Comrades is not. Actually, it might be a good idea, Lindsay. Sleeping pill and you wake up at the top of Inchanga. That would be the best way to run Comrades, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, from
Maybe
your
not.
lips to God's ears.
If only it was that easy, Barry. If only it was that easy. Lindsay, cross-training question. Is swimming as cross... Oh, Lindsay's just fallen off his chair, I think. No,
Sorry.
he's back. Is cross-training... Is swimming as cross-training better than cycling?
It's not better than cycling. It's different for sure. And cycling has a better crossover to running. So that's the first thing to note. But where swimming is great is that it's a good cardiovascular exercise that has very little, induces very little fatigue, particularly into the legs, because most non-swimmers are very lazy kickers. But what it does do is it really flushes the blood through the muscles. So swimming is a really good activity when you're sore, when you're tired, if you're struggling, want to still do some training, but you're really battling with the running. But I wouldn't. So it's better in its place. I guess that's the short answer, is that it has a really good place as a form of cross training. But in terms of more specific crossover to running, cycling is probably better. And the one thing that I always noticed when I did lots of cycling was that cycling on its own didn't make me a better runner. But if I was running a lot and cycling, what the cycling did is it made me a better uphill runner. So I can give you that as my own personal experience with using cycling as cross training.
Barry, let me ask you, did cross-training play a part in your sort of running career? Has it been something you've included over the years?
Absolutely not. Nothing. I mean, zero. I mean, and I got to be honest with you. It's not. I mean, it's not something I should be proud of, because I mean the facts are all there, and maybe I could have been better, but we just didn't see it that way. We didn't do cross training. We didn't go to the gym. We ran and we partied. So at the end of the day, that's how we got through life. And we hid behind our talent. I had a fabulous training group of about 7 of us that were all sub-7 Comrades runners. So they were proper, and they keyed off each other. But yeah, we didn't do any cross training at all. No. Didn't cycle. They made me do 2 mid-mars. My daughters made me do 2 mid-mars, and I'm a terrible swimmer. I'm actually not a swimmer. I'm a stone, and I actually hated swimming. They made me train in the bath, and you got that black line up and down. Can't talk to your mates. That's a shocker. It's a shocking sport. Terrible. Sorry, all the swimmers out there, but it's a shocking sport.
I love it. Barry, let me ask you a question about race day. I mean, obviously, having run 49, going for number 50, you know that Comrades routes better than anyone. What advice could you give to the novices, particularly around the uprun? I mean, let's talk uprun because that's what the next one is. But what's the best way to attack the Comrades route? And are there any hidden secrets that you need to know before you run the race?
Look, talking to the novices will take on board what Lindsay said earlier. When you're facing the uprun, you should actually be afraid. In fact, you should be very afraid, because it is an absolute monster. The downrun will kill you because of what happens, after Hillcrest. and the drop down into Durban, it'll destroy your quads. But the up run, the first half of the up run it's so tough. So the guys must go with eyes. Lindsay said it, eyes wide open. And I don't want to put the fear of God into the novices, but they must know that they must start slowly. Start slowly, get slower. Because if somebody whips out on the up run and has a go at that course will humble them. So, you know, just be absolutely conservative in your approach, you know.
That sounds like my cross country advice. People always ask, how do we run cross country? I always say, start the first lap conservatively and get slower each lap after that.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, the nice thing about the up run is that if you do survive, well, you will survive. You'll survive the first half, and you'll get to the top of Nchanga. And the race does open up in front of you after that. There's no shadow of a doubt that their second half is dramatically easier than the first half, although we know that you're going to be very, very tired and sore by the time you get to little polys and then obviously big polys. So there's no way of getting away from those things. But the second half is so much easier. So if you get to the top of Nchanga and you're in one piece, you can have a really nice up run.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, you've scared the living daylights out of Rihanna. I think she's going to have to sleep with her light on tonight. She's saying, now I'm really scared. But a good bit of fear going into a Comrades is good. You want to really respect this race. It can be a beast.
Fred, that's the word, respect. I've said to so many people, if you lose respect for this race, it'll stand up and clap you so hard. You know what? The time you wake up, your clothes will be back in fashion. So you know, it really is, and it's not to be scared, but to be highly respectful. I can assure you that after 49 years, I have not lost one bit of respect for that race, because I know the day I do, it'll hurt me so badly.
Yeah, Barry, and I can speak from experience. My first Comrade was a failed attempt, and I went in there thinking it was going to be a doddle. And man alive, did Comrades show me what Comrades is about. And I went back the next year and with eyes wide open, as you said, and went in with tons of respect and had a great run. So, you do need to go in there with knowing what to. It's scary, but do the work, trust the process, and you will be fine. Lindsay, great question here from I think it's John. John saying, how important is heat training? I enjoy my early morning runs as work is crazy. So heat training is very minimum for me. Do you need to do specific heat training for Comrades?
Look, there are some years where it's very hot, but they are, they're not common. I mean, 2008, 2013 are two that really spring to mind that were very, very hot years, and they both happen to be up runs. But look, it'll get warm. Make no mistake. Like on the down run, and you very seldom get less than 24 degrees Celsius, certainly in Pinetown. So it'll get warm. The up run tends to be warmer than the down, and then it cools down quite quickly after about 4 p.m. As it starts to get dark. But you don't have to, because it's not hot. You don't need to do like very specific heat training. If you do a couple of long runs, you run a couple of races, you know, those push you into the heat of the day. You'll probably be all right. When it starts to get winter in the Highveld, then yes, maybe you want to push a couple of weekend runs a bit later. You don't have to worry about kids' school sports and that kind of thing. So a few runs here and there are not a bad idea, because it can get hot, but it doesn't get super hot. You're probably looking at the start in Durban, you're looking at like between 14 and 17 degrees. So it's not hot, but it's also not cool. You probably get through Pinetown before it gets really warm. And once you're in Hillcrest and into the Valley of 1,000 Hills, it tends to be a bit cooler. And then, as I said, there have been a few years when the Bergwind's blowing, that once you get over in Chunga and you're heading towards Nachel Dam and you're running towards Umlaas Road and Cato Ridge, there have been years where it's savagely hot, but it's not common. It's normally quite bearable on the up run. And again, you're probably looking at temperatures between 22 and 26 on most Comrades, and we've had those days at 28, but that's not common. And we are a bit later in June again, so the 9th of June, it's not bad. I mean, since when the race was on the 31st of May, there were more hot days. 9th of June to 16th of June has always actually been fairly mild.
Brad,
I have to tell you, sorry, I've got a Barry Holland story for you, and it goes back to 2013. Barry, you'll remember 2013. It was the super hot uprun.
Yeah.
And I like talking to my friends, so I hang out with all the guys right at the back. And it was a tough day. I mean, anybody who ran in 2013 won't deny that it was super, super hot, and people were really suffering. But I was in pretty good nick, and I thought I was having a pretty good run. And I got to the top of Polly Shorts, and there's a massive TV screen that they have at the top of Polly Shorts. And I got to the top of Polly Shorts, and as I got to the top of Polly Shorts, you were finishing. And obviously they gave you some TV time, and they were saying, oh, Barry Holland's just finished. And I don't know what your previous times were, but I knew they were a lot faster than you ran in 2013. And I thought to myself, man alive, if Barry Holland's only finishing now, I'm having a great run, and went on to finish that year. So thank you, Barry. You made me feel great at the top of Polly's.
Yeah, I tell you, 2013 was a shocking year. I mean, that Bergwin absolutely destroyed that field, completely destroyed it. I mean, I've only been to the medical tent twice in my life, twice on two Comrades. One when I ran my 6:29, and they only took me there because we did the famous Holland roll and collapsed across the line and all of that. And they took me off because I was simply exhausted. I got into the medical tent. I was sitting up. The doctor came running over. I said, Doc, I am absolutely perfectly hydrated. 100% my hydration is absolutely spot on. I couldn't have got it better. He shone his light in my eyes and all of that. And he said, no, 100%. I agree with this guy. Just give him a Coke, let him sit here, and then he can go just now. And that was just pure exhaustion. When I got to the line, when I did my 6:29, I couldn't have run 10 meters more. Comrades, that was it. It was like the hourglass. You turn it over, that last grain of sand had just run out, But in 2013, I must tell you, we're in the medical tent, and they've given me 1 pint, and now they're giving me another pint. And as you know, they won't let you go. They won't let you get out of the medical tent unless you can go and have a wee. So until you can have, and that's the rule. You can't, you've got. So now eventually I get up and I get off the bed, and I've got the trolley. You're walking with your trolley with the saline bag on the top, and I'm pushing it down towards the outside where I can go and show that I can have a wee. And there's my mate Alan Robb. He's also pushing his trolley down the little corridor thing, and he says to me, "Geez, you're a nice guy." I said, "What do you mean?" Oh, he said, "Well, you know what? And you passed me at the chicken farms, and you didn't even shout and say my name." I said, Al, at the chicken farms, but I didn't even know my own name. So I tell you what, it was a shocking year. It was a killer.
No, it was.
Just for our international viewers, then unfortunately they're not dishing out pints in the medical tent. That's pints of saline solution until you go to the bathroom. But they'd probably get you to the bathroom faster if they were actually pulling pints and dishing them out in the medical tent.
Exactly.
Cool. Very great story. Lindsay, this is a wonderful question. Let me pop you on there. From Schindler's on Tour saying, for a finisher, what's the difference between training long run pace and actual Comrades race pace? I love this question.
Yeah, that's a really amazing question. And it's part of the reason why people struggle to run slow enough in the first 30 kilometers of Comrades, because typically for all the medals, except when you are winning Comrades, you are running fast on your easy runs. Then, when you're training for a silver, 5 minutes a K, you're typically running, depending on where you are in the silvers, you're running like between 420 and 450 per K. So you're always running faster than Comrades race pace. When you're training for a Bull Roan at 6 minutes a K, you're typically running 520 to 540, 545 per K. You're training for a finishers, that's about, not a finishers, a sub 11, it's about 7 minutes a K. And you're typically running close to 6 to 6.5 minutes a K. And for the finishers, you need to run like, I think it's 8:09, I can't remember the exact number, 8:03. But call it under 8 because you lose that time at the start. So you just under 8. But your typical training runs in the week are like 7 to 7:15. Okay. So that's part of the reason why you're so used to that being very easy, and I can run for 40 Ks at 7.5 Ks. And when I'm fit, I don't even get tired when I run 40 Ks at 7:15. I know you don't believe that now, but that is what will happen. So fantastic question. And you should have at least 3 runs, long runs programmed into your plan where you're going to target them to do Comrades race pace, so that you know what Comrades race pace feels like, and also so that you know how your body responds to the nutrition that you take when you're running much slower. So when you're racing marathons, there's a high demand for carbohydrates. When we run Comrades, there's a high demand for fats. We need small amounts of carbs to burn lots of fat. Don't worry, that doesn't mean you're going to be eating fat on race day. Please don't do that. We've got enough fat. Even the scrollest of us have got enough fat. But the point is that our ratio and how often and how much sweet stuff we can tolerate changes with the intensity. So you must do some easy runs at Comrades pace and practice your nutrition so you can get an idea of how you're going to respond.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Lindsay, another quick one. And I've just looked at the time. Man alive, it's amazing how time flies when you're having fun. It's been amazing. So we're going to try and wrap up in the next 10 minutes. I know we've got to be in bed by 9. The coach says off screens half an hour before. So we're turning the lights off at 9 o'clock. Well, I'm not. Maybe ESCOM might be, but that's it. So at 9 o'clock, we're calling it quits, okay? This is a great one from, who's it from? Leston. Leston saying, my Sunderland Cape Town Marathon result puts me in a D seeding. I'm under pressure to move into C seeding. Will a move from C to D really make a difference?
No, it won't. That's the very simple answer. And I think this under pressure to move into C, this sounds a little bit like your mates are trying to make you smoke a cigarette around the corner. So, it depends when you ran the D in October. So if you've got a marathon like now in the next 2 weeks, so either this weekend coming or the 3rd of March, then it's okay to go for the CCD. Okay. Will it make a huge difference on race day? No. To your confidence, yes, because same as Barry was talking about, the 8K falls into the 21 falls into the marathon. So it does help with confidence. And if you're going to try now and you're fit and you've been training, then yes, go for it. Try and get your C seeding, recover. 18th of March, you start training for Comrades. If you go for it now, this weekend or next weekend, and you don't get it, then that's it. Then you just take your D seeding and you prepare to the best of your ability for Comrades. Okay.
Absolutely.
So those are your 2 scenarios. It won't make a huge difference on race day. It'll make a huge difference to your confidence. So go for it if you're going to go for it now. Otherwise, forget about it.
Can I give a third scenario, Lindsay? Am I allowed to? My suggestion would be wake up slightly early on race morning and make sure you're at the front of D. That's the easiest way to get into C, is as soon as they drop the barriers, you're in C. There you go. Plans solved. You don't have to kill yourself. There you go.
Yeah, if I can just chip in here something, Lindsay, I think you totally agree with me here. There's a whole sort of almost like an anomaly to Comrades training, because all through my racing career and my running career, if I wanted to race a marathon, I raced it on this side of Christmas, shall we say, before Christmas. And because you should not be racing a marathon in the build up to Comrades. The two don't work together. You've got a marathon training program is completely different to a Comrades training program. So, they work against each other almost, but because we're required to get seeded and we get locked into these things, and it's actually a little unfortunate in a way that we get locked into chasing, like you said earlier on your presentation, chasing the seeding. It's actually crazy. It's really, really wrong, because if you're going to go and race marathons and looking for marathon PBs, do it in October, November. That's the time to be racing marathons. Rest over Christmas and then start your Comrades training in January.
Absolutely. And part of the reason why you were able to do that so successfully is because you take your 6 weeks, then you mentally and physically fresh to train hard for a marathon, run it, give yourself a break in December, and then start slowly building your way up to Comrades. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. Barry, question for you from Rian. Rian's saying, what distance do you recommend for your Comrades long run, and how far out from race day?
Okay, so and Lindsay touched on this just now. The new home for Oceans is putting a spanner in this works all the time now, because everybody wants to run Oceans, and then it leaves you a very small amount of time between that and your best time for your Comrades long run, your route tester, or your Comrades long run. I always like to have that 6 weeks before Comrades. I would put it 5 weeks before Comrades, but that's the absolute minimum. Nothing after. You cannot run 55 kilometers 4 weeks from Comrades. That is just suicide. So for me, best timing is 6 weeks. And distance, to me, always ran about 54, 55 Ks. In the old days, we used to go quite a bit further. We used to go to 60. I think it was detrimental when I think back on it. We didn't know much then, and I don't think 60 is clever. I know guys that do even more than that, but I always believe that 54, 55 Ks is about spot on.
Awesome stuff. Lindsay, you want to add anything to that?
No, sometimes you can let the experts who've run 40 know, but that's the perfect answer. That's I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Cool stuff. And then I think last one for the night, it is from, actually second last one, because the last one's going to throw into the next webinar. So this one is from Destin. Destin wants to know, is it too late to start training for Comrades? Finish this program. Last Comrades was in 2022. Can Destin start tomorrow?
So Deshan, it really depends on what you've been doing. Okay, so you've obviously got some experience because you've done a Comrade, so you've got a little bit of an advantage over people who've done nothing. So if you've been keeping generally fit, so you've been doing some running up to now, you can probably get yourself up to speed. I wouldn't say it's recommended, but yeah, if you are doing absolutely no running, then it's possible to run Comrades. Would I recommend it? I wouldn't recommend it. So yeah, I think if you've been running, you're running, even if it's only been 2-3 days of running per week, you've got something to work off. There's enough time. But if you're starting from scratch, your risk of hurting yourself to do enough to have a comfortable Comrades is high.
You're going to hurt yourself. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. We had a question in from Nat asking about coffee and caffeine. Nat, your timing is perfect. We actually published a video on the Coach Parry YouTube channel today about caffeine and coffee. So just go onto YouTube, search coffee, caffeine, if that's what you're interested in. Shona put together a phenomenal video, probably one of the best videos we've created about that. Please do go check that out. And then final question from on Gama saying, should the fueling strategy be different for the up run to the down run? Sorry, it's from Emma. Should the fueling strategy be different for the up run to the down run?
I don't know if the fueling strategy needs to be different. I mean, I can tell you that from a physiological perspective, the two big differences between the up and the down are that the down presents a much higher degree of muscle damage from the pounding. Let's not get too fancy, from the pounding that you take from Hillcrest into Durban, and the up run is more of a slow poison. Like, you don't get nearly as sore, but your muscles are it's like you lifting weights for hours on end. So they are slightly different, but I can't say, having run yeah, I mean, from a nutrition point of view, I've found that what worked for the up and the down worked very well. My up and down PBs are within like 5 seconds of each other.
Sure.
I prefer the up, but yeah, the times are my up PB is, I think, yeah, I think it's 5 seconds faster than my down PB. But from a nutrition point of view, very, very similar. Both work. The relative intensity is quite similar on the overall. Maybe in the first 30 Ks there is a slightly higher demand for carbohydrates than on the down run, but I don't think it's big enough that it warrants having a different strategy. It's a bit cooler. It's a bit cooler in Maritzburg on the start, so perhaps a slightly different strategy in terms of hydration. But I drink to thirst, so that would be like, yeah, so I might start drinking a bit earlier on the up. But those are really tiny nuances. I think if you have a plan that works, it'll work for both directions.
Yeah, Lindsay,
Well,
and my 2 cents here. Sorry, Brad. My 2 cents here is just I think the nutrition that's such a small aspect. The thing that's going to really, really make a difference there would be doing strength training, because those first 38 kilometers, you'll probably end up getting worse from from fatigue of not having been strong enough getting up those hills, as opposed to necessarily missing out on nutrition. I would say you're better off focusing on strength aspects than changing your nutrition for those two.
Awesome stuff. Shona, brilliant. Thank you very much, team. It's been amazing. Before we wrap things up, please do let us know in the chat, what is the one thing you got out of this webinar, and what are you going to implement in your training over the next 4 weeks? Please pop that into the chat. We'd love to see that. Don't forget, next week, Thursday, the 29th of Feb, is the ladies' webinar. We'll pop the link into the description as soon as we get done. So if you want to register for that, you can click on that link and then join us for the next general webinar as well. We'll be sending out the emails if you haven't registered. If you haven't, please do so you get those reminders as well. Barry, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor having you on and hearing your stories and just sharing this incredible milestone. And I want to wish you all the best, the build up to Comrades 2024, and hope you have an incredible run on the 9th of June to get that 50. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. What an incredible achievement. And yeah, I'm looking forward to being there to see you, to come in and celebrate with friends and family. It's going to be amazing. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Brilliant stuff. And then Shona, thank you to you as well. Folks want to get that strength training plan, we'll pop that into the description too. And we look forward to seeing you in the live strength classes on the Coach Parry training app. Thanks for your time. And then I'm going to leave the parting shot for the coach, Lindsay Parry. Last thing before we wrap things up, Lindsay.
Yeah, I've been Comrades coach now. I think this is the 17th Comrades. And what I love about running is that you are basically never too old to learn something new. And it's not something new, but I haven't vocalized it as well as Barry did tonight. And so it's not to do with this Comrades, but if you really want to have longevity and get your green and your double green, then that's probably the best piece of advice that was given out on today's webinar. So that'll be my parting shot. Train hard, have fun out there on the day, recover properly, take a break from running, and then come back stronger for your qualifying race at the end of the year.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much to everybody joining us. We know your time is precious and you could have spent it with anyone. We're really grateful that you spent it with us this evening. Good luck for your training, and we look forward to catching up with you on the next webinar. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.